Welcome to Mr. Bebop. Agatha Christie was no stranger to adventure, having traveled around the world on the Grand Tour in 1922, with her first husband Archie Christie, and later accompanying her second husband Max Malawan, on his archaeological expeditions in Egypt and the Middle East, starting in the 1930s. Her experiences during these trips inspired several of her novels and stories. Just like the author herself, Hercule Poirot liked to travel. The mode of transport may have been less enjoyable for him on a flight or on ship, but his interest in culture and human psychology were never limited by geography. In many of the novels and short stories, we see Poirot heading off for distant lands, for trips that were meant to be for pleasure, but where inevitably crime and murder would rear their ugly heads. Here is a list of countries and novels and stories that feature Poirot outside of England.
Belgium.
The Chocolate Box. In the story, Poirot recounts one of his early cases that took place in Belgium. The story revolves around a mysterious chocolate box that resurfaces years later, leading Poirot to investigate a murder that had occurred in the past. The Belgian setting is significant as it provides background and context for Poirot's character and his earlier career as a detective in his home country.
Egypt.
The Adventure of the Egyptian Tomb. Poirot and his friend Captain Hastings travel to Egypt to an excavation site. They go to investigate deaths related to the Curse of Menhura. 3 members of the excavation team die shortly after the opening of the tomb of the Egyptian king of the 8th dynasty. After a visit with the widow of the dead archaeologist, Poirot and Hastings make their journey. It was a 4-day voyage by boat from Marseille, France, to the coastal city of Alexandria in Egypt. From there, they had driven to Cairo and to the pyramids of Giza. Problem at sea. Despite Poirot's dislike of the sea, he was on holiday on a ship in the Mediterranean Sea. The ship arrived at the Egyptian city Alexandria. On the same day, a fellow passenger met her demise. Whilst everyone was touring the city, except a very few including Poirot, someone had murdered Mrs. Clapperton. It was up to the Belgian detective to solve this locked room mystery. Death on the Nile. Poirot went on holiday to Egypt to spend a winter there. He remarked that he was traveling to Egypt by train, not by boat. He stayed in Aswan, a city in southern Egypt, when the real story begins. Most of the story, and where there's tragedy, happens on the steamer SS Karnak. Its journey takes the passengers down the Nile River. Overall, Poirot does his traveling in many ways in this novel, by foot, bus, train, and boat. He works with Colonel Race from British intelligence in the investigation of the murder of wealthy heiress Lynette Ridgway.
Syria and Turkey.
Murder on the Orient Express. Poirot was in Syria at the beginning of the story, to assist the French army in a case. Poirot then left Syria for Istanbul. He had planned on spending a few days there, for he had never visited the Turkish city. When he had arrived in Istanbul, Poirot received summons back to England. That same night, he boarded the Orient Express. The last stops the train made were in Belgrade and Vinkovci, now in the countries of Serbia and Croatia respectively, before the train was halted because of a snowdrift. It was in this journey that Poirot solves the murder of an American businessman who occupied the compartment next to Poirot's.
France.
The Murder on the Links. Poirot receives a letter from a Paul Renaud, asking him to come and help, as he has been receiving threatening letters. Poirot journeys to France, only to discover he is too late. The body of a man has been discovered on the links of the nearby golf course, stabbed. The Big Four. Captain Hastings returns to England after 18 months in Argentina, only to find his old friend Hercule Poirot about to leave himself for South America. However, an unexpected visitor comes in and dramatically collapses on the floor. The only clue to what he wants is his saying Poirot's name, his only words, and writing the number 4 many times. Initially set in London, this novel sees Poirot travel to various locations in the south of England, as well as France and Belgium. The Mystery of the Blue Train. Catherine Gray unexpectedly comes into a fortune and is invited to stay with family on the French Riviera. Well, of course they want to get to know her now. On the way there, she meets the rich and beautiful Ruth Kettering, daughter of the even richer Rufus Van Aldine, who has just gifted her a set of famous red rubies, which in turn carry with them rumors of a curse. With a priceless set of gems, a wayward husband, and a set of characters each with their own secrets and turmoil, the tension builds, until finally, murder. Death in the Clouds. Poirot was flying back from Paris to England when another passenger is murdered. Poirot returned to Paris for further investigations, starting at the home of the murder victim. Besides going to the victim's home, he visited the Charite, an antique shop, and the office of the airline company. After a short visit to England to make inquiries and to see Inspector Japp, Poirot returned to France once more. This time not by plane, although it is not explained how he traveled. It was in France that there was a break in the case before returning to England one final time. The Girdle of Hippolyta. In this short story from the collection The Labors of Hercules, a gallery owner asks Poirot to help retrieve a stolen Peter Paul Rubens painting. Poirot is reluctant to be involved in what appears to be a simple robbery, but takes it on because of the subject of the painting. Japp, who hears that Poirot is going to Paris for this case, asks him to also look into the case of an English schoolgirl who disappeared on a train to Paris. As Poirot is fond of saying, one thing leads to another.
Iraq.
Murder in Mesopotamia. The wife of an archaeologist at a dig near Hassanieh in Iraq is murdered. Luckily for the team at the archaeological site, Poirot was in Syria disentangling some military scandal and heading towards Baghdad. On his travels, he was asked to stop at the dig site to investigate the murder. It is not explained how Poirot traveled in the novel. At the dig, Poirot solves more than just one murder. At the end, Poirot returns to Syria, and a week later boards the Orient Express to head home to England, which leads right into the novel Murder on the Orient Express, published 2 years earlier.
Greece.
Triangle at Rhodes. Wishing for a quiet holiday free from crime, Poirot goes to Rhodes, the largest of the Dodecanese islands of Greece, during the low season in October where there are but a few guests. Aside from the young Pamela Lyle and Sarah Blake, there is Valentine Chantry, a consciously beautiful woman, who seems to swoon under the attentions of Douglas Gold. Valentine Chantry is poisoned. Was it by her husband, or the jealous wife of the man she was apparently having an affair with?
Jordan.
Appointment with Death. Poirot was visiting Jerusalem at the beginning of the story. He had come to Amman, Jordan, to visit a colleague of Colonel Race in British intelligence. This man, a Colonel Carberry, invited Poirot to look into the death of a Mrs. Boynton, an odious woman who's a complete sadist. In typical Poirot fashion, he interviews all witnesses to arrive at the truth. It is not explained how Poirot traveled in this case.
Switzerland.
The Arcadian deer and the Erymanthian boar. In these two short stories from the collection Labors of Hercules, Poirot travels to Switzerland where he spends a few days touring various spots. After he ascends to Rocher's Nedge, he's tasked in capturing an elusive and ruthless killer, described as a wild boar.
Herzoslovakia.
The Stymphalian birds. In this short story, Lake Stemka is a lake in the fictitious European nation Herzoslovakia, with a resort hotel on its shores. It was off the beaten track, not overcrowded, and ideal for a retreat. While holidaying there, Hercule Poirot encounters a young British politician named Harold Waring, who needs his help.
Ireland.
The apples of Hesperides. In this short story, Poirot travels to the convent of St. Mary and All Angels, located in Inishowen on the west coast of Ireland, in search of the gold goblet owned by Pope Alexander VI. He stays at Jimmy Donovan's hotel. In the same story, Patrick Casey and his daughter Kate, aka Sister Mary Ursula, were Irish.
Ramat.
Cat among the pigeons. A revolution takes place within Ramat, a fictional kingdom in the Middle East. Knowing that he is unlikely to survive the violence, Prince Ali Yusuf entrusts his best friend and pilot Bob Rawlinson to smuggle a fortune in jewels out of the country. Rawlinson conceals the gems within the hollow of the handle of a tennis racket belonging to his niece Jennifer, the daughter of his sister Joan, without telling them. Unbeknownst to him, a mysterious woman watches him from the neighboring balcony. The prince and Rawlinson die in a plane crash while attempting to flee Ramat. Thank you for watching. See you again next time.